Hey, Startup Nation. Imagine a job where you can work wherever you want, on whatever you want, from wherever you want. Hello to white sand beaches of Thailand or the comfort of your own couch. Oh, and most importantly, you're your own boss. Now, what if I told you that the dream job could become your reality? This is the life of a freelancer, and with some hard work and with the help of Hectic, it can be your life too. Hectic is an all-in-one business management software built specifically for freelancers who are just getting started or looking to take their freelance business to the next level. Hectic is everything a freelancer needs to get started, from an easy-to-use contracts and proposal builder to client management and project tracking to expenses and invoicing that features click-to-play technology that makes it quick and easy for freelancers to get paid. And we all want to get paid, Startup Nation. Built specifically for freelancers, Hectic is everything you need to get started. Visit gethecticapp.com/the startup life now to learn more and start for free. Yep. Adding your first client on the platform will always be free. And if you sign up through gethecticapp.com/the startup life, you'll be supporting me and this podcast, because who couldn't use a little support these days, Startup Nation? Visit gethecticapp.com/the startup life to find everything you need to start or grow your freelancing business today, and put those in-demand skills to good use in the way you've always dreamed of. The link is there in the show notes.
It's time to be about that life, the startup life. Here's your host, Dominic Lawson.
All right, Startup Nation. So I hope you're ready to receive some value today. My name is Dominic Lawson, and this is the Startup Life, the show for entrepreneurs and career-minded professionals. You know, Startup Nation, we've gone through a lot of changes over the past year. You know, with COVID, the pandemic, economic crisis, stuff like that. A lot of us are trying to make that change, make that pivot, if you will, and which is why we have a fantastic guest for you today on the show. He's a former NFL player turned entrepreneur and business coach, and his new book, Pivot to Win, is out now. Make sure you go ahead to the link in the show notes to purchase that book, Pivot to Win. He is former NFL player Jordan Babineaux. J Babs, what's up, man?
Oh man, Dominic, thanks for having me, man. I really am looking forward to spending some time and to chat and share some valuable insights that I believe your listeners, may be able to implement right away, and or at the very least, they can identify the things that has worked or has not worked for them when we dive into more about what we're going through and what we're experiencing.
Absolutely. Man, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. And let's just kind of dive into it. Look, 2020 was one for the record books, man. What did 2020 teach you about, business, life, family, all of the above? Just kind of share that with us, if you don't mind.
Yeah, 2020 has been, it's been a historic year, for many reasons. And, the pandemic has really forced us to identify the things that are most important to us in our life and business, and really, provide some, I think some immediate feedback on where we are in our lives.
Right.
And whether that's, us living in our purpose, wanting to live a life more fulfilled, or, cultivating, building relationships, or understanding the current position that I am, in terms of, career path, may or may not be on a certain trajectory in which
right.
I once envisioned. I think, all of us, I've looked at 2020, in a way where, how do we, still achieve our vision, in times of, this economic crisis and uncertainty,
right.
With so much happening. And, we talk about, creating a vision, many times, we've all heard start with an end in mind.
Absolutely.
But it's also the process, the journey that makes it all worth it. The measurement of who we are and who we become in the process of achieving what it is that, what we want, far exceeds the reward of the actual achievement. For me personally, it's been spending more time with the family.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually feel like that, through this pandemic, I've been thriving,
I hear that.
I'm a social person,
Right.
but selectively social.
Right.
I could certainly isolate myself and kind of, grind out some of, the work. And then for me, I just happen to be, writing a book and going to school. So,
Right.
being around people became less distractive for me. So I hope that as many people have throughout this pandemic have had a chance to do some self-reflection, turn the lens onto the inner self and evaluate where we are and where we want to be in life.
For sure. A lot of people, and you kind of talked about this a little bit, a lot of people are making that pivot, because a lot of industries are either, scaling back or some are even kind of going away. Some of those businesses are kind of going away. Unfortunately, we have a lot of businesses that are, kind of closing due to the global pandemic and stuff like that. And like you said, with your book, how to pivot, a lot of people are at that fulcrum point. They're trying to figure out what's next, what to do next. And look, let's be honest real quick. A lot of times when professional athletes, they leave the field, leave the court, stuff like that, they don't do so hot after they leave. Kind of talk about what are some of those things that led to your success being a sports broadcaster, entrepreneur after your NFL career, and what can people learn from that?
Yeah. Well, John Maxwell said that change is inevitable.
Right. Right.
Growth is optional. And we experience change. I mean, daily, Dominic, moving from one meeting to the next, or, spending time at the workplace and then having to come home and be, a parent or a spouse.
Right.
And navigating change throughout the day. I think we can all, navigate change a little bit better if we understand the change or understand that we're actually in a transition. And, as a former athlete,
right.
Former NFL player,
right.
That word former will always be like, we can't play the game forever.
Right.
And so in identifying and understanding that I was headed for a change, headed for a pivot, I wanted to get ahead of the curve. So I think when I talk about in Pivot to Win, I talk about, this, all of the lessons and the successes and failures that have, over time that have gotten to this point.
Right.
I've created or designed what I've used as a model for pivoting. And it starts with recognizing if you're in a pivot or headed for a pivot. And the simple question, we can ask 3 simple questions, around recognizing if we're in a pivot or not. And I think it starts with identifying and understanding who we are. So getting clarity around what it is that we want, desire, or anticipate for our lives. So it's recognizing that we may be not in a position where we thought the trajectory of our career or the trajectory of our business should be. And, or, as we're all experiencing this pandemic, right? So businesses have, had to recognize, understand that decision now. Now, again, pivots can be planned or unplanned, but starting with the recognizing and activating that sense of awareness, to me, begins the pivot model. And then as we move through it, there's a deciding factor. It's understanding, am I committed to making that change? For me, I transitioned into sports broadcasting, but I still had a player's mentality. So as I was getting coached on, my on-camera presence, my questions or my answers and my commentary was guarded. So I was still answering questions as if I was in a locker room.
Gotcha.
I wasn't throwing people under the bus. I wasn't saying why a team, lost or feeling blameful and pointing a finger when actually I was, but in a sense, Dom, I wasn't giving the viewer what they actually wanted.
Right.
They wanted to know the truth. Like, what's the truth? Like, why was the play successful? And so for me, it ended up just shaping my words different. It wasn't about a name of the player. It was the position that the player was in. So those little things I had to navigate. The step 3 in the model is ground zero, and ground zero is just kind of this new position of identifying where I am and where I want to go. So when we experience change, there's loss,
right?
And oftentimes, we can be at ground zero and feel inadequate. We can feel like, in a sense, that we're kind of experiencing this imposter syndrome, like I'm not the person that I think that I am. And then we start exploring these different assumptions about ourselves, about who we are. But at the core, we got to identify what that is. If you're, from a personal perspective, from a business, it's, what's our core product, or how are we serving our customer, in our ways that we're doing that.
Right.
And then moving through the transformative phase of courage and transformation is in those times of uncertainty.
Right.
I'm still moving anyway. Right. I mean, this is the only way to clear those blocks, and maybe it's designing new processes for how we do things. Maybe it's new behaviors or new rituals and habits that we want to form. Finding or building this support group to help us move through change. And then when we do, it's this transformative stage of sustainability. Now we're acting and living within our purpose. And for a business, now we're operating at our highest efficient pace, and we're serving our customers at a premium.
For sure. You mentioned something just now, that sustainability piece, because, a lot of times, and I appreciate your answer, by the way, but a lot of times, we get so inundated with what's around the corner or what's next, what's trendy and stuff like that. How do you maintain that sense of just not necessarily not growing, but sustaining the successes and growing upon the things that are already working? Because I think a lot of times entrepreneurs, they fall into that trap. You know what I mean? They fall into the trap of like, what's trendy, what's new. I'm trying to beat the competition. Kind of talk about that a little bit, if you don't mind, Jordan.
Yeah. That's a great question. Again, when we're persisting through, these levels of courage,
right.
It means that it may mean that we take an audit of our behaviors.
I hear that. Yeah.
We take an audit of how we spend our time. Like if we looked at our time throughout the day, we can easily identify gaps in where we could have, been more productive. We've identified this person or this time with this person wasn't worth the time. And it's actually, it took me away from something that was most important. But the biggest thing, Dom, I think that stops us from achieving what it is that we really want to do, who we want to become, or how we want to grow our business, are those distractions. Distractions, it's the one thing that will, derail us from our path. And, we have these high level of competing interests, that's vying for our attention. But again, to answer your question and come back to, how do we clear those blocks?
Right.
Is it designing new process? Is it implementing those new behaviors and forming new rituals? It could be reinvesting in something. It could be investing in yourself or investing in a product that already was proven successful. And so if we look at what's already working and we identify that as a starting point, before we go out and try to get the next shiny object that we think that our customers want, it may just be taking inventory of what we already have,
right,
and what's already working for us. So oftentimes, wanting to do something that someone else is doing, or being the first to market for a new product, if that's your business model and
right,
and your strategy, sure. I mean, and you have a heavy portfolio in R&D,
right,
and you want to see some returns from that,
right?
Certainly different, right? And so that's strategy, around that. But I really believe that if we just take an audit of where we already are, it would show us the next path and the next move for us to make.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing that. Once again, Startup Nation, we're talking to Jordan Babineaux, entrepreneur and business coach. I want to ask you this, man, because, talk about, performing under pressure, right? When, like whether it be, in business or even back to your NFL days, one game comes to mind where you broke my heart there in a certain NFC wildcard game tackling my guy Romo, but that's neither here nor there. I'm gonna let that go. But seriously though, like talk about when there's these pressure points in the business or in the game. What's that mentality like, right? Like you gotta make a play. Otherwise, like things can go drastically the other way. Kind of talk about that mentality to remain calm under pressure, but at the same time, attack. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's great too. It's, when I was young, I was a kid. I would compete with my brother. My brother was my biggest competitor.
Absolutely.
And, it was nothing sweeter than beating, little brother beating big brother, but it didn't matter. I mean, it was a foot race. We'd throw a football into a trash can from 20 yards away. Who can make more tackles in a football game, whatever it is. I mean, we were just competing. And as I got older, I began to realize that level of competitiveness was fueled from an external motivator. And I get it. Sometimes those things can move us to do really great things. I do understand that. But as I got older and I moved into the profession of competing through sports, I realized the biggest competitor was myself. And everything that I wanted to do or I looked outside for other people to validate can have a negative effect. So here's what I mean. If this person becomes a starter or this person gets the job, they get the hire. I don't. Someone gets something that you want that you don't have. And then we get into this, this negative kind of mindset of, jealousy, envy that can totally deteriorate us or take us off track from our real course.
Right.
When we can evaluate it from a different process and say, oh, well, what could I have done better?
Right.
That could have put me in a position to become more attractive or to have not made the repeat mistake. And although mistakes are good, repeat mistakes are, they're intolerable.
Right. Absolutely.
And so that, but I was cultivating a competitive mentality at a young age. But as I got older, I realized that it was an internal motivator that was the real factor in me becoming my best self. And so when you talk about performing under pressure, I think one of the cool things that you see in successful people is that they have a routine. And a routine is just simply a process of doing things that can help influence the result. Doesn't mean that success is automatic. It doesn't mean that I'm going to win, but it does give you some sense of control. So, For instance, in basketball, shooting a free throw, you'll see the basketball dribble 2 times, twirl the ball before he shoots, or a golfer may have a pre-shot routine or, a number of swings and conversation he may have with the caddy.
Right. But
he's going through his routine, right? And his routine is simply designed to help me create success in my head. So when I'm actually performing it or actually doing it, it doesn't feel like pressure. I think, we create pressure and we create how we feel about pressure. It's like when you start to feel pressure, it's like, oh, I get anxious. My heart starts to race.
Right.
And that's the natural part of, being human.
Of course.
Right. And we can counter that too. If, one method of countering, feeling anxious about something or, highly anticipating something is about to happen is to slow down our breathing. And I think if we start to, if you've ever experienced a sense of anxiety or wanted to, be in a place before you're there, it's being able to slow down and take some deep breaths. Because when we do that, when we have that sense of anxiety, our chest begins to constrict, our posture begins to, slump, right? And everything that we're feeling is right here in the gut and right here in the chest. When I would say just practice opening your arms, widening and lengthening your chest, and slow down your breathing. And that to me has been one of the triggers that's worked for me. It's one of the things that I talk about in the book Pivot to Win. And I think it's just a simple, a simple little tactic that anyone can use when they have these levels of feelings about our emotions or about pressure.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that. And you mentioned something, and I was going to talk about this later, but we're kind of here now. You kind of dived into just a little bit about breathing and stuff like that. And it reminds me that, we're in an era right now, Jordan, where a lot of people are really focusing on that mental health piece when it comes to, creating their businesses and stuff like that. Kind of talk about that a little bit, because that seems like that's a very important part. And you talk about this in the book.
Yes. And, I would, say, Dom, is that, we all will experience these barriers in life. And,
big facts. Yeah.
I mean, you can bet on it. You can set a goal today, and I'm at, life and distractions and unnaturally. I mean, I'm not even saying this is just malicious by anyone.
Right.
Will, derail you from what it is that you want to do, who it is that you want to become. Right. And so, change is just one of those life lessons that just never stops. It's the choice that we have from deciding, whether we're going to grow from it or not. And, this pandemic, personally, we talk about it, for me has really forced me to, focus my lens on the self. And it's been a high level of mindfulness practices, that has helped me, find some peace within,
right.
Certainly in times of uncertainty and,
right.
and when we're going through what we're going through, and, there's, fear and death and loss of jobs and the inability to pay and keep the lights on. And we see at a crazy rate that people are losing their homes, and
right.
And it's already an existing challenge of trying to find equality in our country,
right?
Be it in every component,
for sure,
in finance and well-being and in economics and in livelihood. But now we're challenged even more, and it's to me has been one of the most I would say satisfying things that I've done to create stillness in this time. And it's been those mindfulness practices. So for anyone who's never practiced meditating, you don't have to start with 60 minutes of meditating. You don't have to start with a 40-minute yoga session. You don't have to do that. I mean, to me, it's the consistency of it is more important than, how long I do it.
I hear that.
Because we can really deter ourselves and try to set high level goals that seems beyond our stretch. And, come day 3, you're like, distractions seep in. Right. So if you never practice meditating, or if you've never practiced yoga, start with the basics. Start with 60 seconds. I mean, it's hard, Dom, and you and I know it. It's hard to turn your brain off for 60 seconds.
Absolutely. Especially in this day and age. Yeah.
Oh man, when distractions seem like it's happening every 35 seconds, right? There's a new ping, someone wants your attention, my social media feed, all of these different notifications and things of that nature, are distractions that are just negative emotions that shoots through our body. When we start to talk about feelings and my phone's ringing. Oh, who could it be? It's like, I better get that, right? When I've been totally opposite. My phone could ring, but if I'm in the middle of dinner with family, I'm not answering the phone.
I hear that.
And so some of those practices of being present, those mindfulness practices as well that I just talked about, those breathing exercises in a time like we're going through today, is part of the vitality of us moving forward as a people, and more so as a person, an individual, and an organization.
All right, Startup Nation. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We got to pay some bills. Once again, my name is Dominic Lawson, and you're listening to The Startup Life. Hey, Startup Nation. I think we can all agree that 2020 was more or less a dumpster fire, right? I mean, come on. On top of surviving a worldwide pandemic, good friends and family of mine lost their jobs, had their hours cut, or went out of business altogether. Yet many of these same people are talented creatives, web developers, photographers, graphic designers, SEO specialists, and writers with solid, marketable, in-demand skills. So I've turned them onto Hectic. Hectic is an all-in-one business management software built specifically for freelancers who are just getting started or looking to take their freelance business to the next level. Hectic is everything a freelancer needs to get started, from an easy-to-use contracts and proposal builder to client management and project tracking to expenses and invoicing that features click-to-play technology that makes it quick and easy for freelancers to get paid. And we all want to get paid, Startup Nation. Built specifically for freelancers, Hectic is everything you need to get started. Visit gethecticapp.com/the startup life now to learn more and start for free. Yep. Adding your first client on the platform will always be free. And if you sign up through gethecticapp.com/the startup life, you'll be supporting me and this podcast, because who couldn't use a little support these days, Startup Nation? Visit gethecticapp.com/the startup life to find everything you need to start or grow your freelancing business today, and put those in-demand skills to good use in the way you've always dreamed of. The link is there in the show notes. All right, Startup Nation, welcome back as we continue our conversation with today's guest here on The Startup Life. For sharing that. Once again, Startup Nation, we're talking to Jordan Babineaux, author of Pivot to Win. And Startup Nation, if you want to check out everything that's going on with Jordan, and maybe, you're looking for some coaching and stuff like that, go to pivottowin.com. We have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you listen to the replay on the podcast. Jordan, I want to talk to you about let's kind of transition here a little bit, because we have many people who are business owners out there who listen to The Startup Life. And look, man, they're going after contracts, they're going after stuff. And look, man, they hear that pesky 2-letter word, right? No, right? And so you talk about like how not to take no for an answer, man. Kind of talk about that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah. In Pivot to Win, I share, several stories, and a lot of them are, a lot of them are centered around one, Pivot. Let me just share this.
Sure.
Pivot to Win is a story. It's a journey,
right?
It's a book to help people navigate change, and over this course of the book, through my own personal growth and business development, I talk about my failures and successes along the way. So it's designed to help people, as a tool to utilize and position themselves to navigate change better. When being told no, there's as a child, you're like, well, I'm told, you're constantly being told no. I mean,
right, of course,
for quite some time, right? And you look for ways to find a way around it. Well, mom says no, go ask dad, right? Or this person won't allow you to do it, but maybe someone else will. It's like, or you're not the person who has the authority to make that decision, and maybe I should talk to the person who does,
right?
And so that's one part of it. Just being told no and finding a way to still get your yes, and whatever that is. And then there's not telling yourself no. And here's where the real shift happened for me as a professional football player. Alpha mentality. I don't need help. I can figure it out. I can do it all. I got all the answers. And those are really like career suicidal type of thoughts and attitudes, right? It's like, how much do you think you're going to achieve by yourself?
Right.
without helping other people, or without involving other people, or without having a team around you to help achieve the things that you desire. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to shift from what was this macho football alpha male mentality and thought process of how I approach things to now being more open and accepting the things that maybe I wasn't so good at.
Right.
And it meant being vulnerable. I think the biggest thing too, even in leadership, Dom, is this piece of being vulnerable. There's a high, a sense of leadership qualities when you look at the great leaders who can say, even though I don't know the answer to what we're experiencing in this COVID, I don't know the answer, I'm willing to facilitate it with my team so we all can discover what those new ideas are.
Right.
And I guess quietly in saying that, there was a sense where I had a fixed mindset, on certain things, and had to really open myself up, one, to being more vulnerable, facilitating and offering greater conversation to grow so that I can move into a growth mindset. And that growth mindset is what allows us to be open to new ideas, open to new concepts and new ways of designing things and new processes of how we, implement strategy, or, how we onboard, our clients or our customers,
right,
or our employees. And so, so it's one thing, just to be told no and have to go, find another way to do it. But equally and more important, not telling yourself no.
I hear that. That's one of the things that a lot of people say, that, let the other person say no. Don't say no to yourself. So I definitely understand that. I want to ask you this, man, kind of transition a little bit. You talked about, your clients and stuff like that just now. When they call Jordan and to say, like, we need help, what are they asking for? What are they looking for? Like, Jordan, we need help with this. We're trying to figure out that. Kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great question. Because, I've had a chance to meet and conversate with former CEO of Ford Motor Company and Boeing, Alan Mulally. And, Alan, his beliefs around change or reaching a goal or a team alignment is centered around everyone knowing the plan.
Right.
And oftentimes when customers call with, concerns, it means that I have to shift away from being a person who's offering a product or a person who's offering a service, and become more so a listener to what and understanding the customer needs.
Right.
I think it's one thing to have a great product.
Exactly.
You can have a great product, but if it's not what your customer needs, then chances are the success of the business will be challenged. And so again, I think as leaders and entrepreneurs, while we're learning and having to build strong teams, and having to cultivate relationships with our customers and clients, and what may be a future potential need for our customers as well, it requires us to listen. It requires us to understand some of their challenges as well, and then providing the best solution, without having to go design new product, invest a lot of money and all.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
That's a whole different thing.
Of course.
But what I'm saying is just to better understand how you can serve your existing customers.
Right.
And that's what's important.
I hear that. I hear that. Thank you for sharing that. Hey, Jordan, man, if I were to ask one of your clients, man, what's your coaching style? What would they tell me?
Dom, relatable.
Okay.
Relatable.
I hear that.
Because, here I am, I have built successful businesses, and I have, I've also failed. I've also built failed businesses.
I hear that.
My first business was it was a family business, early 2000s. It must have been, early in my professional career, where you're like, okay, well, I'll invest some money in this. It seems like a good idea, but I'm going to focus on football. So you guys go ahead.
Got
so,
you.
Almost one of the worst things that you could possibly do, right? How can, in other words, you better inspect what you expect, right? I mean,
Right.
I'm expecting a return. So let me, if the cadence of our meetings is understanding what that is, then, let's check the numbers weekly and get, more frequency around what it is that what a return actually looks like.
Right.
So that first failed business was that, that expensive lesson into, business entrepreneurship, and then, design another, successful businesses. So my brother and I started a production company where a lot of the processes that we did in the beginning were completely different. I mean, we were still investing in content, but the difference was we didn't have to manage employees. We didn't have to manage people. Our processes were pretty elementary in terms of, how we needed to, to facilitate a successful product, right? I mean, we go from, a concept, a script, an idea, hire a company to film it, produce it, and then we get a certain type of output. Well, here we are again and having to, the same conversation of, people managing, the business or the idea or the investment that weren't qualified to do so. And there was a point where I had to step in and, more than anything, all of those, business conversations have been new opportunities to learn.
I heard
that. And I get it. I mean, who wants to lose money?
Of course.
Who wants to invest in something and not see, their return, or to see that it was something that helped people or made the world better, or, did something, to help a certain group of people. I mean, that's the dream, right? That's the ideal outcome. But in those conversations, for me, it was nonstop learning. And so in Pivot to Win, I talk about, some of those lessons in those early business failures, and how I was able to move through and become, and get to the place where I am today, a little bit more sustainable, better processes, helping and working with people better, because I think there was also a place where I needed to mature as a leader.
Right.
And that's, that's just being honest with myself. I did personal audits before I looked at, out to other people. Like, what are the skills that I need to develop to help this win? And that's where I started. And now, Dom, I'm about 4 months away from graduating with my MBA.
I hear that.
And I've decided to go back and increase my business acumen and better understand some of the things that I want to do and the person that I want to become, the leader that I want to be, the influence that I want to have on people, and the impact that I want to leave on the world. Those things are important. They're important to me. But it started by understanding myself a little bit better, taking personal accountability before looking externally at those who may have, mismanaged a product or a project.
I hear that. And I appreciate that transparency there, because I think a lot of times people look at, either successful entrepreneurs or even business coaches is like, well, and to be fair, some business coaches are like, well, I know it all. I don't need to constantly improve, sharpen the saw. And so well, first of all, congratulations, being 4 months away from MBA, but also I appreciate the transparency of saying you're always improving, always sharpening the saw, always trying to get better. I see that athletic mentality still is kind of in there from time to time. I see. Yeah. So I definitely appreciate that. Once again, Startup Nation, we're actually wrapping up with Jordan Babineaux, author of Pivot to Win. Once again, if you want to purchase that book, we have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you listen to the replay on the podcast. Let me ask you something really quickly, man, because I know you're there in the Seattle area. We're actually one of our radio partners is KKNW there in Seattle, so they're definitely enjoying this conversation in this interview, man. Just kind of talk about in your aspect and your commentary, what's the entrepreneurial landscape there in Seattle from what you've seen and you being there and stuff like that?
Yeah, I believe now, where we are in terms of how technology has rapidly developed, the exponential growth of exposure to the internet, social media, and all of the different platforms that are available to us. Now more than ever, we have an unlimited amount of resources at our disposal at the drop of a second. I mean, we each have an assistant available to us,
right,
in our phone,
right, exactly.
I mean, we're not short of information, and if we're not short of information, Dom, then what is the challenge for us to achieve what it is that we want, or the person that we want to become? And again, oftentimes I go back to distractions. There are just so many things that are fighting for our attention that it's derailing us from becoming or achieving what it is that we want. The opportunity for entrepreneurship in Seattle is huge, but I think globally, now more than ever, we can communicate with people across the world very easily. I kind of look at that as a high value, but also have to look at it from the lens that how do I leverage, the exposure into these different communities and other countries to potentially grow and reach a new customer base, or provide a new product for people in a different part of the world where may not be a need. Where we're looking. So always looking for, opportunities to grow, personally, sure, but in the business as well. I think if we're, open, and kind of have our mind and our ears and eyes open, to other opportunities, then we can see farther than where we currently are in our current position. But entrepreneurship, I think, as tough as it is, and Dom,
man,
you got to put some work in. You got to put the work in. But the opportunities,
absolutely, yes,
I think endless.
For sure, absolutely, definitely know a little something about that life, for sure, man. I appreciate that, man. Before we wrap up for today, man, once again, I just want to say thank you so much for your time and your energy and your book. Once again, that book, Startup Nation, is Pivot to Win. We have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you listen to a replay on the podcast to purchase that book. If you would, man, just kind of talk about the Babineaux Foundation. I know it focuses on research for lupus and stuff like that. My best friend's mom just passed away a few months ago, due to complications to lupus. Kind of talk about, your foundation and why it's important to you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks, Dom. I really believe, and I'm thankful for, the values that my mother instilled in us. And, it was faith. It was, obviously education, and it was helping other people.
Right.
Look, we grew up poor in Port Arthur, Texas,
right.
Economic ruin, surrounded by negative influence of drug abuse, violence, and, negative influences, that could have easily, sent my brother, myself, any of my siblings,
right.
To an early grave or to the prison. And, super thankful, for my mom instilling those core values into who we are. And, there's some things that as a child that you don't know or understand, but the older you get and the more experiences that you have, you look back and make that childhood, adulthood connection.
Right.
And it's been a powerful experience it's been a powerful experience to go through that process. We're given quite a bit. I think all of us, and when I say quite a bit, I'm not talking about, how much money you have in your bank account, or,
right.
The great clothes and stylish bags and things that you have from a possessive standpoint. But, even, the fact that we have good health, or the fact that we have running water, or the fact that we have these smaller things that don't seem to be, you know, I would guess say, very flamboyant,
Right.
In the sense of it's normal, like
Right.
live in United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
But I could easily walk down the street, Dom, and see a bunch of people who don't have warm water,
Right.
don't have a warm bed, or eating out of the trash can. I saw a man eating out of the trash can the other day. About a tear to my eye.
Right.
And so we're in these positions as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, to also help facilitate growth within our community. And I think for all businesses, that there is a corporate and social responsibility of ensuring that we affect and touch these different areas in our lives. And I guess, Don, we'll have to save our conversation, another conversation from, all of those social and injustice issues that's happening within our country now.
Absolutely.
But still, but there's a corporate responsibility. I mean, even environmental change. We can talk about the environment, right? When companies and organizations for so long have created the problem, now are owning the responsibility of providing more sustainable products, more bio-friendly, type of material.
Right.
You're starting to see the supply chain of different corporations more inclusive of minority businesses and there's growth there.
Absolutely.
But we're not there. And so, having a foundation or being able to help other people is embedded in who I am.
I hear that.
And whether I have $1 or whether I have $1,000, there's always a chance to help other people. And I think with that mindset makes the world a better place.
For sure. And I can definitely hear your passion in that, Jordan, for sure. And I definitely look forward to and very open to that conversation in the future as well. I know you guys sell some books and stuff like that right now. But, once again, Startup Nation, that book is Pivot to Win. It's absolutely. We have that link in the show notes for easy access if you listen to the replay on the podcast. And that's going to wrap up our time with Jordan. Once again, thank you so much, my man. Proud son of PAT, man. Appreciate your time, boss.
Yes, sir, Dom. And anyone who wants to connect with me can do so on any social media platform. It's Jordan Babineaux across all channels. And then I'd love to connect with you and join the Pivot community so that I can learn from other people as well. I mean, I think it's equally important for me to hear stories of people and how they navigated change and things that they've been able to overcome. Share that with the community. We're going to grow this thing, and we're going to create change. And we're looking for a bunch of change agents who have a positive and growth mindset and want to do good in the world.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Dom, for having me. And I look forward to connecting again. And to all your listeners, thanks for the time.
Sounds good. And real quick, Startup Nation, before I let you go, make sure you check out Pivotal Moments Podcast with Jordan Babineaux. We have that link there in the show notes for easy access as well. Thank you so much, my man. And as always, Startup Nation, if you have an idea, be about that life, the startup life. If you want to let us know what you think about our show, have an idea for a show topic, or would like to advertise on our show, send us a message on the Startup Life Podcast Facebook page. And while you are there, like and follow our page as well. It's a great way for us to engage with you, Startup Nation, and really grow our community. The link is there in the show notes. Subscribe to the show as it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or even on your Facebook timeline or any other platform you like to get your podcast. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you find our content valuable, please give us a 5-star rating, as it will help us climb the charts and help more people find our show. You can also listen to the show on the Startup Life Podcast new website. There you will find the all-new startup blog where I write on many topics that are interesting and helpful to you on your path to entrepreneurship. And hey, if you have an idea, be about that life, the startup life.